Hey. Hey guys, so I'm back again. So you had a problem earlier on connecting. So because I really wanted Maya to be on because she's the one who's going to help us understand so much about all this. Just on the issue surrounding albinism. So Maya, please, if you can see me now, please come online so that we can. I see you, Clement Wekesa. I see you, man. Thank you so much for coming in. Maya, please, can you see me? I need you to send a request so that I can go live with you. Who else is here? So, guys, so today we're going to be talking about understanding albinism and some of the things that, well, maybe the society doesn't speak so much about, especially in the African context, is some of these things like albinism. So what is albinism and what do you understand about albinism? So today joining us will be, Maya will be joining us. Maya will tell us more about albinism and living with albinism and more so understanding albinism. Okay, the misconceptions, about the sights of people with albinism and things like that. Okay, so feel free to, tell us what you understand about albinism and where you come from and the challenges that people living with albinism are facing from your own understanding. Well, so what is albinism and what are are there types of albinism? Maya, I see you. Okay, so finally, I think we get to yeah. What's up? I see you, people. Trevor Marlin, I see you. I see you guys. So we're waiting for Vinny. Sorry, man. I don't know what was the problem, but I lost you. So I'd like to have you again. Hey, Maya.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Finally.
How are you? Been having trouble to
Good,
join.
good. Technology.
I'm telling
Yeah.
you. But finally, we are
I
here.
need to put earphones. Yeah, I think it will be easier.
Yeah. And then, yeah. Are you okay now?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So your voice is a bit low. So if you can be, because I'd want
Yeah,
people to
I
hear you.
will shout. Okay, I'll shout.
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. So
Yeah.
well, Maya. So I'm sure there are many people who want to really listen to you and the topic surrounding albinism and basically just understanding albinism. So if
Yeah.
you could just introduce to us who Maya is and more about you as we move along with the topic.
Okay. So my name is Grace Maya, as you said. I have albinism. And I was born with it. Normally, someone is born with albinism, you don't develop it later on. And I have gone through school, through primary, secondary, university, and I'm working right now. So everyone with albinism can go through the normal processes of life, even up to whatever level they want to go to. We have the High Court Judge, Justice Mumbi, we have a nominated MP. So albinism doesn't really lock you out from achieving anything you want to achieve. And then albinism is just a genetic disorder, the way you can be born either having some DNA, which is a bit different from everyone else. So in our case, people with albinism, we are born without the melanin, without the pigment melanin. And melanin has a lot of uses for every one of us. It is what gives us color. It what gives you color, as Rashid. And then now the absence of it in people with albinism causes us not to have skin color or hair color or color in the eyes. You'll notice people have the pupil, which is the very dark part of the eye. So for people with albinism, our pupil is very let's say, grayish there. It really reflects what is surrounding us. And then, because we also don't have melanin in our hair looks blonde or whitish, something like that. There's no color. It's not black or brown. It's just whitish or blondish. And then also on our skin, the absence of melanin causes us to look white, sort of. And also, melanin helps to absorb the UV rays from the sun. And now, when we don't have it, people with albinism, we are very sensitive to the sun. So, when we go out into the sun for long periods of time, we'll tend to get sunburns, which later on develop to skin cancer. So, we must be very careful with the sun. So, in a nutshell, that is what albinism is and the role of melanin in people who have it, like you. And then the absence of it, what happens when you don't have melanin now for people with albinism?
Okay, okay, very well.
Yeah.
So, just for the people who, would, of course, want to know more about albinism, I'd like to ask you another question. Are there types
Yeah.
of albinism?
Yeah.
Or what is,
Yeah, yeah. There are two broad types, they're a bit technical. So there's ocular and oculocutaneous. So ocular albinism occurs when you don't have melanin in the eyes only, meaning your vision is impaired, and this only occurs in males, like only guys have it. So you'll find someone like you, looking like you, Rashid, so he has melanin on their skin, melanin in the hair, but absence of it in the eyes, causing ocular albinism. So he will not be really sensitive to the sun. He'll only have trouble with vision. That is ocular albinism. And then there's another type. Now, the second broad type is called oculocutaneous, which is what I have, where there's absence of melanin in the hair, skin, and eyes. And then, as I mentioned, we face challenges with the sun and challenges with sight. Yeah.
okay, okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting
Other
because,
than that, there are other subgroups, but it's really just a version of the two broad ones I've mentioned. So one can also find out what other subtype they have by going through genetic testing. It's not offered here in Kenya. It's only offered in maybe developed countries like the US, but there are two main types first.
oh, that's interesting. That's very
Yeah,
interesting because
yeah.
I'm one of those guys who just understands that albinism is a lack of melanin, and there's no category. And when you break it down to those two major,
Yeah.
types of albinism, it opens my eye really, because I didn't understand that someone can be one type of albinism, someone else has the other type of albinism. Okay, so
Yes.
just tell me more about the albinism where someone just the effects is on the on the eye, because is
In
it
the
common?
eye.
Is it something that
Yeah.
you can identify very easily, or are there people who actually have that type of albinism, but many people don't know because now it seems like this only affects the eye.
Yes, so for ocular albinism only affecting the eyes, it's a bit hard to know unless now the person realizes that, why can't I really see properly like everyone else, and they go to an ophthalmologist. So only an ophthalmologist will be able to diagnose that type of albinism, the ocular albinism. And then also in European countries where you find everyone is looking blonde, everyone is looking white, it's hard to tell a person with albinism from any other person. So still, when they go to an ophthalmologist and they get their eyes checked, then the ophthalmologist can really diagnose that you have albinism, because you may blend in with anyone else. So the first doctor who will really, really accurately diagnose what albinism is an ophthalmologist, because they'll check the eyes, and then later on go to the dermatologist who will check the skin.
Oh wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
So this is an eye opener, and well, there's so many topics, there's so many stories about albinism and the people who live with albinism. Okay, and this is a wide topic, and so today
Yeah.
we'll try so much to bring we try so much to bring all the aspects of this so that people understand that people living with
Yeah.
albinism go through this, and they need to understand this about them and how, you know, they can be integrated in the society, and especially
Yeah.
the African context, because some
True.
of these
True.
things have been put aside as taboo. You understand? We've had stories.
Yeah.
We've had
Yeah.
the story some years back about Tanzania, and where people, there are so many myths about, albinism and the people living with albinism. Some of the
True.
things that
True.
people, the people out there were saying is, um, the myths, albinos don't die. Albinos, their skin make you rich. Those are things that
Yeah.
our cultures have not talked about so much. People shy away from
True.
talking about it. Until such things happen, there's a time people talk about albinism. Okay? So
True. And
from
I'm
your
glad you've said that because you've mentioned something I've not mentioned. I normally refer to people with albinism as people with albinism instead of albinos, and I'll tell you why. If you refer to someone with the name of their condition, it means you're dehumanizing them. But if you mention that they are a person first who just happen to have that particular genetic problem or genetic disorder, you're making them first know that they're human, and then whatever they have doesn't really define them. So normally I tell people you don't call maybe someone who's visually impaired blind. They are not blind, they're a person first
yeah.
who is visually impaired, or maybe calling someone a cripple. You will say they're physically challenged. They have physical challenges that affect their mobility. So
Exactly.
normally, I really stress on semantics in the way that people with albinism see themselves and the society sees them. Instead of just referring to the condition, they put the human first.
Interesting. Well, I agree with you on that, because these are things that could happen. This is a condition. This is a medical,
Yeah,
scientific condition that could happen to
yeah,
anyone. And
to anyone.
it wasn't. Yes, there was a part of it that was taught in school, but it wasn't very
Yeah,
emphasized. Maybe because maybe the syllabus or the education system didn't find it as important as it is, or it should be.
true,
Okay,
true,
and so
true.
persons living with albinism. I was talking to a friend of mine some time back, and he was telling me that there are things that he went through as a kid, living with albinism.
Yeah.
So, if I was to ask you a question about your personal experience as a
Yeah.
person living with albinism, okay, as we also try to enlighten people on what causes albinism, because there are people who actually understand the scientific part, but when it comes to relating with people with,
The social, yeah.
exactly, they really, there's an off, aspect.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Let me go back to where you talked about the teachers teaching in schools. I remember learning it in biology, I think Form 3 or Form 4, I can't remember. And at least our teacher was really, really explicit in explaining it. And then, given that there was a person in class who had albinism, it was easy to also explain it. I once talked to a group of teachers in a very, how do you say, empowered school. They're really techy and all that. But I was very disappointed, or rather surprised, when I talked to the teachers and I asked them, how do you normally teach this topic? And some told me they actually don't. They just skip that chapter altogether, that subtopic of albinism when it gets there, because they don't know how to explain it. Yes, it's very explainable in a genetic way, but when you try to go to the social aspect of it, it's a bit hard for the teachers who maybe have never encountered someone with albinism. And I was very glad when our teacher now really broke it down, and I really now understood why. I meet adults and I ask them, didn't you learn this in biology? And they're like, no. So now I understand. So teachers find it hard to explain the social aspect of it, in that for a person to have albinism, someone to be born with albinism, it means both parents have to be carriers, not have albinism itself, but just be carriers of that genetic DNA. Meaning, my parents look like you, Rashid. My mom and my dad, they actually look like you, but somewhere in the DNA, a component of it has carried the albinism strain, which is denoted by the small a, not by the big A. If they have the big A in genetics, I am the one who has the big A, but my parents had the small a. That's why they don't have albinism, they just carry it.
Okay.
So in a simple way, that's only way I can try to explain why two people who don't have albinism now give birth to a child with albinism, and both have to be carriers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the same case, when I maybe get married to someone who doesn't carry the gene of albinism, our children, maybe that chance will be like 1 in 4. There's a very small chance our children will have albinism if my partner doesn't have it or doesn't even carry the gene. Yeah, so it always takes two, not
So
just one.
so the two people have to be
Yeah.
carriers of the gene for
Yes,
them to.
yes.
Oh, okay.
To
Okay.
have a child, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So because I know there are very many people who look at persons living with albinism as well, if I was to get married to you and we we're blessed with kids, then we'll have kids with albinism. What you're saying is, if I do not carry the gene, okay,
Yes.
you and me, if we are blessed with kids, then our kids, the most
Will not
is
have
it most likely
albinism.
or 100% they will not be?
They will not have albinism, but maybe one of them will carry the gene. They will only carry the gene, maybe one of them only, but they will not have albinism because both of us do not carry the gene. It's only me.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So this is something that people really need to understand. I know we were taught about this
Yes.
in high school and primary school.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of science and those.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, but I don't remember
It was
the
a bit
deep.
overwhelming.
Yeah, because I didn't see
Yeah.
it as something that was very important, and that's a problem because the choice of things that we want kids to understand in schools have
True.
to be placed and emphasized very well, because you see now the society we are living is very different, but then we
Yeah.
have we have to really make it very clear out there that there are people who still have that old system of thinking, the myth,
Yeah.
and the cultural thinking about the people living with albinism. Okay, because
Yeah.
there are people
Yeah.
out there who, even if we do all this live, we bring documentaries, they still have that belief. You understand?
Yeah, culture is I think culture is always very important to a society. And when we don't find maybe a scientific way of really explaining things in a way that people would understand, they'll always revert to culture. Sometimes culture is good, but sometimes it's bad in a way that culture is really rigid. If they don't want to understand something, they will give it their own name, they will set their own belief system about it, and they will go on with life. So that's the only thing about culture that is really negative, the way it's very rigid in the way they see things.
So I was thinking about now the kids who, let's say kids who are brought up in certain setups where people never understood and didn't have the knowledge about people living with albinism. Okay, and so
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
thinking, in a country or in a continent where everyone is dark and not everybody understands, what albinism is,
Yeah.
the difficulties that that kid will grow with
Yes.
trying to trying to be included,
Find,
to feel included in
finding
that society.
and also getting an identity of who they are. That one it's a real crisis in identity. If I could talk about myself, when I was growing up, I really didn't feel different because my parents brought me up in a way it seemed normal to everyone else. And I only realized I was different when I was outside with other children playing, and they would call me Mzungu. And okay, not really in a negative way, but you know how we always admire the whites.
Yeah.
So it affected me a bit, but not so much. So when I later on grew up and when I realized what albinism really was I was in around, I think, class 6 at that time. So there were these meetings of parents of children with albinism where they met and they talked about their struggles. And then that's the first time I met someone else with albinism apart from my sister. I have a sister with albinism as well, and she's 4 years younger than me. But I just had my own belief system about albinism until I opened up to the world, or rather, my parents helped me do that. And I met other children who have albinism in other families where there are even other black children. Because in our family, we're only two, and we both have albinism. We don't have any other person who's black. So when I now met other children and they have black brothers or black sisters, and I was like, wow, okay, so this is just, it's normal. It's pretty much normal. And now I got to understand better about what albinism is. And I now I felt like, yes, this is my family. I don't have white parents out there because children can grow up thinking that way, that well, my white and my parents are black. Are these my real parents? So that's the time I really now got confident in what albinism is, and I'm just normal like everyone else. It is just melanin missing. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But did you find any problem really out there? As I'm glad that you're blessed with a family setup that understood,
Yeah, yeah.
knew what to do. But now, when it comes, because when a kid is out there, imagine
Yeah,
they're
that's when you
basically growing.
realize.
What are the challenges that you faced when you go and meet people? Because their childhood friends will understand you, very
Yes,
fast, and they'll try
true.
to accommodate. I don't know if that's the best one, but they'll try to, bring you close to them because they feel like they
Yeah,
understand you
yeah.
more. But there's always that
Yes.
territory that you're not familiar with, and the people are not familiar with, with you. So did you at
Yeah,
some point
true.
also go through a place where people didn't understand you as a kid and you felt like I
Yeah.
am not in the right place?
True. Yeah, that happened actually in school, and it actually first involved adults. When I was in primary, it was a bit easier because my mother was a teacher in the school I was in.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, people with albinism have eye challenges. So, she would always tell the teachers that I needed to sit in front in class, they needed to write bigger letters on the board because I was very short sighted. But when I went to high school, that's when really the world shifted. In high school, there was this subject called chemistry and geography and physics and all. So the first day of chemistry, before that first class of chemistry, the chemistry teacher called me to the lab, and she asked me to read these thermometers and all these things with very small markings. So I told her that would be a challenge for me to read, but if I had something like magnifying glass, it would be easier for me to read. For her, what she got was I cannot see at all. And that was the end of me and chemistry. So I was told, simply because I have albinism and I have eye problems, I cannot learn chemistry, I cannot learn physics, I cannot learn geography, because of course reading a map requires you to really, really dig deep and see all those small things. So that was the first point of misunderstanding I came across, in where now someone chooses your subjects for you based on what maybe your small
What could it
challenges,
be?
instead of being accommodative to maybe give you a tool that can help you work around it. And then socially, in an aspect, I think because I was taught by my parents to speak up, no one could really talk badly about me. The other thing about maybe when you're at a disadvantage, when you don't speak up, you let other people believe whatever they want to believe about you. But anytime I encountered a challenge, like if I cannot see something that is very far off, or if I'm feeling uncomfortable and we're having a function out there under the sun, I will speak up and say, I'm sorry, I cannot see well. So if you can actually speak what you're writing, or at least write bigger letters, that would help me. Or if I can find somewhere where there's shade, I can be able to still join in with you guys as you do whatever you're doing. So every time someone has a disability or any challenge around them, I'll just encourage them to speak up like I learned to. Yeah.
Well, I know there's so many guys who would want to ask questions here. And if there's anyone out there in our live, and you feel like you have a question that you want to ask Maya, please feel free. Send us, send your comment there, and I'm gonna read it, and Maya is gonna answer you. So Maya, I understand
Yes.
that these are the challenges, and most of the people don't talk so much about this because they feel like they don't have a platform that allows them to talk.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
And you talking about it, do you feel that you are lucky to be where you are? And if you were not where you were, do you think your life would have been different? Do you think, your exposure and
Yeah.
if it wasn't the way
Yes.
it was as you grew, do you think it would be
Yes.
a bit different right now?
Definitely. I think exposure helps everyone in a big way. So going to a school where I wasn't classified as a blind person in primary because of our challenges with the eyes and all that, parents find it easier to send their children to schools which are classified for blind people. So that makes a child with albinism really limit their way of thinking in the way that, I am blind, so this is all I can do and all that. So going to a school where I got an equal chance to compete with other, let's say, normal people, I think it gave me the confidence to also learn survival skills, which are helping me right now. So exposure is a really, really important thing for children. And I normally tell parents, please don't send your children to schools for the blind. Let them let them learn how to interact with other people who can see from the word go, because there's only so much you can do to protect them. Yes, there's a school for the blind in primary and secondary, but there's no university for blind people only. There's no company that will only employ blind people. So I always encourage now parents to teach their children how to actually interact with every other person competitively from the word go. That's how you just develop a thick skin and how you learn to speak up, and you just get exposed in so many levels. Also, there are associations or sort of programs or organizations that fight for the rights of people with albinism. Like my first exposure was through Albinism Foundation East Africa, when we had those parents meetings of children with albinism and parents of children with albinism, having a group where you can feel you belong to and you interact with them and you share your struggles. That really, really helped me to understand where I am right now and why I look at things the way they do. So that is very, very important to join a group, a support group or an organization. That really, really also helped. And then also, the UN also has acknowledged a day to celebrate people with albinism and to just empower them. And this is June 13th. It's coming up in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's 2 weeks.
So the UN, in 2 weeks. So we normally celebrate it in a national level and an international level. So this year's theme is Made to Shine. And we are, yes, so we're just trying to shine everywhere we can and celebrating stories of people with albinism and success stories. There will be a live Facebook concert by people with albinism. We have Konichi, we have so many artists all over the world who sing, they play instruments, they act. So we're celebrating all those talents of people with albinism. That's why this year's theme is Made to Shine. So I think those are the three things which have really helped me: associations, learning how to speak up, fighting competitively, and now having a bigger body to celebrate us.
That's awesome. Vincent is asking a question here, and I don't know if we should tackle the questions first, or we talk about this and then we go to questions later.
We can go along. We can tackle them as they come.
Okay. So Vinny is asking. Vincent is a friend of mine. We were together in high school. He's a professor right now. So Vinny is asking, how is my experience at the workplace? How's the experience at the workplace?
Okay. My workplace experience is very interesting because, as I said, people will not understand albinism until you explain it to them. And at first, when I joined a certain bank as an intern, I was in a department where I dealt with a lot of data, and I was always on Excel and dealing with hundreds of data and thousands of data every week. So that really affected my eyes in that I was looking at numbers all day from 7 to 7 p.m. And at the end of it, I wasn't feeling, it was really, really affecting my eyes. So I spoke up about it. I told my manager, if you could give me a job that doesn't really involve a lot of looking at the computer for the whole time, because now I was developing allergies, my eyes were red all the time, they were dry, and my doctor kept giving me eye drops, and that is not good to get your eyes used to eye drops. So I told my manager that if you can give me, if you can put me in a department or area that doesn't involve a lot of analytics, that would be very good, and I'll be able to contribute more to the success of the company. And she actually understood, and I was changed to a place where I was more of organizing events and trainings and all that, and that really brought out the best in me and also helped me get absorbed into that bank later on, because I was able to really thrive in that new area of work. Another thing also, we have photophobia, people with albinism. That means literally light affects us. And I have to wear glasses which actually darken when I'm out in the sun too much. And where I normally sit, I look at a window and people like opening the curtain a lot. So I have to tell my colleagues, guys, this when you open the curtain, it really affects my eyes and I cannot really work well. So if they can just learn to work with this curtain closed, that will be okay. And actually, my colleagues accept that and they're okay with it. So one time, someone else tried to open, and they're the ones who went to my defense to tell that person, "No, don't open that curtain. It will affect Grace." So if I didn't speak up, my colleagues wouldn't understand, and they wouldn't. And always, I'll be feeling so bad in my heart instead of speaking up and telling them that this thing affects me. So if you can just accommodate, it will be fine. So that's my experience in the workplace.
But so those are some of
Yeah.
the positive experiences that you've had at work. So
Yeah.
would you say that there are cases where you've experienced negativity at work, and you have to struggle to make people really understand that you're just normal like any other person, just that you're living with that ability, you're a person living with that ability.
Yes, because okay, people assume that since I have glasses, it means my vision is 100% okay. So I was once in a training and I was seated actually right in front, and the facilitator kept picking on random people to read whatever is on the slide. So at one point he picked on me and he's like, "Grace, can you read the next paragraph?" So I tried and I just couldn't see it. It was a very small font. So I had to tell him, actually, I can't read. And I'm very happy that you have been telling people to read aloud what is on the slide, because I have not been able to read. I can't read anything. And actually, that now made him realize that, wow, there are actually other people who can also not see in the class, because that also made someone else speak up and say, I also cannot read.
Yeah.
So I have been happy that people have been reading. And it was a 3-day training. So the slides he now came with the following day, he had actually increased the font a bit. So it's just basically that. But I normally tell people the way you carry yourself is the way the world takes you. So I walk around with a lot of confidence and assurance, and that is exactly the same attitude that people take you with. If you see yourself up there, people will see you like up there. But if you feel very bad about yourself and see as if you're worthless, then people will really just have that same attitude towards you.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with you, and that's basically how life is. You read
Yeah,
the art of war.
true.
You just have to understand that you have to stand for yourself. But then again, not
True.
everybody gets to be that confident and express themselves the way you express yourself, because we're all built differently.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are very many people who go through things because of their condition or because of what they're living with, and it's just because some people do not understand, or they're just not informed. Okay.
True. Awareness is very important.
Yeah, because information is there, because we have a lot of things online, and the internet is there, so you can understand what you do not understand. You just take the initiative, which sadly some people don't, because they're
They
just
don't. Yeah.
ignorant. You understand?
Yes.
Yes. Like
True.
you know, even personally living as I was growing, I didn't understand albinism. I had friends who were living with albinism, and we were kids, but I didn't understand because I thought they're probably white. But then what I didn't really understand is how does it happen that two parents who are dark skin have a kid who's white? You understand?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
these are things that are so many out there, and many kids are going through it because they do not understand.
True.
So it's
Yeah.
personally, I think it's the responsibility of a guardian or a parent who's raising a kid to understand some of the things, because these are things that we're going to face
True. True.
in this life, because there are people living with different kind of disabilities. You understand? And so let's say so a person living with albinism sometimes is exposed into explaining themselves every single time they meet someone who doesn't
Oh yeah.
understand it. Because people
All
want to
the
touch your
time.
hair, someone wants to touch your skin, and it's not fun. It's so
Yeah. Yeah.
dehumanizing because not everybody
True.
will take it. You could be stronger than other people, and I'm sure before you reach where you are, you had to take in a lot, right?
Oh yeah, let me tell you a funny story. In between my work experience, at some point I was a receptionist in a company. So whenever visitors had to come in, they had to register with me first, and then now they'll go to wherever they wanted to go. But also because there was a lot of traffic going into that company, we had guards to assist us. So one day there's a lady who walked in and just went straight to the guard. I just looked at her. So when the guard told her, when she explained to the guard where she wanted to go, the guard told her, "Oh, you have to register with Grace." So now she looked at her and she's like, "Oh, I thought that's a doll."
Are you serious?
So it was just, yeah,
No.
it was so funny. Yeah,
Maya, as in
she was
someone
so
passed
serious.
you thinking that
Yes,
you're a
and
doll.
thought I was a doll or a mannequin. Yes, yes, that's what she thought.
Oh my goodness. How did you take how did that, how did you take that? Did she say
I
that
told her,
while you're hearing what did you hear what she was
yeah,
saying?
yes, yes,
Okay.
I heard
That
her what you're saying. So I told her, now I talked. So I laughed, and then she looked at me. She's like, "Oh, I thought that's a doll." So I told her, "No, it's not a doll. You can actually shake my hand and see that I'm human." So when you try to humor such situations, it helps you, because I would have felt bad about it, but I just decided to make a humor out of it and now try to explain that I have albinism and I'm actually not a doll, I'm human.
wow.
Yeah.
That is for me that is a bit extreme, because I feel like I don't know if I should say I don't know if I'll say this. I mean it's how.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. You just have to take things on a positive note or humor. I also have a friend who, when we walk around with her and people keep staring, she'll stare behind and she'll now try to make the person think, so are
Intimidate.
you looking at someone behind me or are you looking at me? So she'll just try to make it look funny and the person will just feel silly and go on. So
What
those are coping
well
strategies because
what
people will always stare.
what do you think is
Yeah,
the
and
problem?
people
What
will always,
there's a lot of seems like there's a lot of disconnect, even at this
yeah,
time and age.
yeah.
Because for someone to really think that you're a doll, really, I feel like that's an insult. Well, it's funny, but I feel like at this day and age, no. We need to be
Yeah,
very
yeah.
informed. It has to be deliberate. You have to want to understand. You understand?
True,
Because
true. Also for my colleagues at work, I think because I was the first person in that organization to be hired with albinism, so all of a sudden now my colleagues will come to me and some will ask what is albinism and all that. And I had another close friend of mine, a colleague, tell me that now when I met you, that's when I started seeing other people with albinism out there. So I don't know how that made me think, because yes, we are there. We're not so many out there, but we are there. You cannot just grow go through life and not have met anyone else with albinism.
or even
But
read
I'm
it
glad that,
somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So for her, she told me after now she interacted with me, then she started now seeing people with albinism everywhere. Like she became more aware and she opened her eyes more to seeing other people with albinism for who they are because we are very different. We go through different backgrounds, which now also affect how we see ourselves. The environment we grow up in, it either gives you the confidence to look at things in a new way, look at your world around you in a new way, or it will actually kill that confidence just depending on how your immediate environment is. That is the family and then school.
So, just another question. What,
Yeah.
from your opinion, what are the misconceptions about the sides of people who, you know, are living with albinism? What are the misconceptions? You know, just in a broad way, because I'm sure there are very many people out here who want to learn, and there are people who probably are living with albinism, and maybe they don't
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
platform to talk about it. What are the
true.
misconceptions? Because I'm sure there's so many, and people need to understand that, well, we are just people like any other person. But of course, we have the
Yeah, so
misconceptions, and you know.
true, true. So I'll start with a cultural one where people believe that if you bear a child with albinism, that is like a curse because, of course, when there's lack of that education and awareness in maybe those rural interior places, they will seek to turn to, in a negative way, they'll turn to culture to explain something. So in the Maasai culture, for example, they believe that when you bear a child with albinism, that is a curse. So they normally tell the parents to put that baby at the entrance of the cow shed. And they will say that the cows will know our own. And of course, a cow is stupid. It will just step on the child and kill the child. So you'll find them in the Maasai community. There are not so many children with albinism because in their culture, they believe that is a curse, and they will put that baby at the entrance of the cow shed, saying that the cow will know our people and all that. So that is one myth.
That is sad.
Another one is, yeah, yeah, it's very sad.
People do that.
Another, yeah, they do that even up to now, because Maasais really stick
They
to their
hold it.
culture up to date. Yeah, they hold it very closely to their heart, and they will believe that and nothing will change that. At least not for the educated ones. And you know also Maasai, they keep moving around, so there's no time for school per se. Yeah. So that is one major thing, no, major myth about albinism. Another one is that people believe that our body parts, maybe our hands or our legs, will make someone rich. So that's why there are those killings going on in Tanzania and Congo. Because also, for example, like Tanzania, witchcraft is actually licensed. It's like being a doctor, having
I didn't know
having
about that.
practicing. Yeah, practicing witchcraft is
A
licensed. It's
licensed
allowed. It's
doctor.
legal. Yes, yes, it's
Wow.
actually legal in Tanzania. That's why that cultural belief is still very strong and it's hard to break it because, of course, witch doctors, if they are classified as doctors as well, what they tell you is you will believe it because they're licensed. So they believe that our body parts can make someone get rich, can make someone win an election, can make someone maybe have twins if you're looking for twins. So they have all those beliefs, which is simply not
So
true. How can bones make you become rich?
that's what
Yeah,
propelled the whole situation, the way,
yeah,
the
yeah.
killing.
Especially during elections in Tanzania, a lot of killings of people with albinism happen because a politician is told by a witch doctor that if you want to win this election, go get me either a piece of an ear of a person with albinism or their legs or their hands. So
Wow.
that's why,
Do
yeah,
you
it's
do
a
you
very
personally,
unsafe time.
so this just before you go to the other, like number three, do you
Yeah.
sometimes feel do you feel insecure? Like, do you feel like you're not safe? Because now, having these stories in mind, and probably you probably have
Yeah,
one or two people that you personally know, or people who you've
true.
interacted because of the situation in Tanzania, do you sometimes feel like you're not safe? Have you ever reached a
Um,
point where you felt like I'm not safe? Yes, I'm walking, but I feel like I'm not safe.
Definitely. Sometimes because, well, generally in the night, bad things happen, so I avoid walking around at night alone. And well, I have been in Tanzania a couple of times, and I was very scared before I went there. But when I went, because I mainly stayed in Dar, which is it's metropolitan, so people are really empowered there and they're exposed. It was okay. But I know the parts in Tanzania where those people still hold those myths and superstitions very, very closely to their heart are those interior places where people don't really go to school, even anywhere else in Africa, where those cases and killings happen are the places where maybe Turkana, where what people are not really exposed. So if you walk around in places where it's a city, it's a metropolitan, it's okay because people are really aware in that point. But if you walk in rural places alone, that one I would not advise anyone to do it.
Wow.
So I just generally make sure I don't put myself in a situation where I'll be walking around in a place where I don't know or I don't have anyone with me.
Wow, I mean, that's huge. Because I can imagine living with fear. First of all,
Yeah.
the challenges that come with personally, living with albinism, health-wise and stuff like that. And then we have
Yeah.
issue of you do not feel
Society.
safe. You understand?
Yeah.
There's a lot, it's a
Yeah.
huge load to carry in life.
It is.
I mean, it seems
True.
like you're fighting a lot of things surrounding you. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not everyone is talking about it because maybe, I don't understand why. It's not talked about so much. But then, of course, those are myths and superstitions,
True.
African
Yeah.
contexts. I don't know how it is in the European countries or in the Western countries. Maybe you'll tell us more.
I have a friend. I once wrote a paper about just also understanding albinism, and I interviewed someone from the US. As I mentioned, in the US, because now everyone is generally white, it's a bit hard to tell a person with albinism from a normal European person. So I interviewed this guy who has albinism in his family, and I think there were like 4 or 5. So for him, his hair was a bit silvery because, as I mentioned, our hair doesn't really have color, so it can be whitish or blondish around there. And everyone else in his family was blonde. So when you're having silver hair and everyone else around you is blonde, it really affected him. And then since his family had a bit of Germanish background, they there was a name, I'm trying to remember, there's a name they were referring him with his brothers, and his brothers would call him a weirdo. Imagine your own brother calling you a weirdo.
So he was the
So
only
it
one
was,
who was living with.
yeah, he was the only one. Yeah, he was the only boy with albinism in that family, and unfortunately, all the other siblings were boys, and they didn't have albinism. So one of them was particularly very hard on him. So, and I really thought that maybe this affects mainly Africans because for us, we really stand out in a dark continent. But also in the US, they encounter the same challenges of being misunderstood, and then when everyone is out there getting a tan in the summer, you cannot go out because you'll get sunburns and you'll get cancer eventually. So the same challenges apply to us in terms of skin challenges and also eyesight and also a bit of society, depending on your immediate surrounding. As I explained, if your family doesn't accept you, you'll grow up with a lot of issues and a lot of insecurities because that is the one place that you're supposed to feel safe and accepted. But that is the one place that your first environment that you already encountered a challenge of being not accepted for who you are. So for that guy, he developed a very fighting nature. He learned kung fu and he does karate and all that. So he kept fighting everyone around him because of the way his family was treating him, which is not really a good way to grow up.
Wow, that is sad.
Yeah,
Well, I
it
only thought
was.
the African, because living in a
Mm,
densely populated dark-skinned people, I
yeah,
feel like the people living with albinism face it rougher more than the Western countries because they have more white people. But it seems like it's a global issue that has not been talked about.
it's a global issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were giving us, the
Oh, the myths. Okay. Oh yeah, another one about the skin. So people believe that since we don't have the pigment melanin, we're not dark. Now they believe that exposing us to the sun will make us develop, develop in quotes, a pigment. So that, as I mentioned, is bad. And I had a friend whose, how do I say, family thought that. So she has really dark spots all over her body because of that. Because once you're exposed to the sun, you get sunburns. And let me go back to the types of albinism. There's the ocular and the oculocutaneous, and under those two main types, there are other subtypes, and they are classified according to how your skin reacts when you're exposed to the sunlight. So there's oculocutaneous albinism is signified by OCA. So there's OCA 1 up to OCA 16. And for example, let me just deal with 1 and 16. So OCA 1, it's a person with albinism. When they get exposed to the sunlight, their skin develops dark spots. And for example, in 16, when they're exposed to the sunlight, their skin will crack, for example. So now this person, when she was exposed to the sun, she started developing some dark spots, and now the family thought that, wow, she's now becoming like us. So they kept on exposing her to the sun, which it was just causing more problems and more problems. So now her skin has dark spots in some areas, and it's very, very hard. And that it's actually now not good, because eventually that will develop to skin cancer, which is, doesn't have a cure.
wow.
So that is one myth that really, really, it really affects now people with albinism when it is actually acted upon.
Wow. So
Yeah.
things people go through and we don't know. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
I see
Another
we have
crazy
like
myth.
less than maybe 10 minutes, but then yeah, it's okay.
Oh,
Let's go. There are a
okay.
few
Let
questions
me
I
just deal
have
with
for you
one,
also.
and then we can. Okay, let's deal with the question, because I
I'd
don't like
like
talking about myths.
okay. I'd like to ask you
Yeah,
a
I'd rather.
question.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah,
listening to Mumbe Ngugi. That's a lawyer.
yes,
She's living with albinism.
yeah.
And I like the way she articulates things surrounding
Mm-hmm.
albinism,
Yeah.
as a person. So my question would be, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
inclusivity, and the strides that have been made by the government, or the society at large. What are some of the loopholes, and some of the things that you personally would want to see as we move forward, like the strides that should be made in terms of people living, the persons living with albinism.
True. The government has done a lot to support people with albinism. In terms, there's a budget. There's actually a budget of 100 million that is normally given to purchase sunscreen for people with albinism, and this is available in district hospitals. For example, in Nairobi, it's available in Mama Lucy Hospital and Mbagathi and Kenyatta. So at least the government has made strides to acknowledge the needs of people with albinism in trying to provide sunscreen, and have them have free skincare. That's in Baga. There's a dermatologist who sees people with albinism for free. She's
Where
called
again?
Dr. Vanessa.
Where is that?
There's a dermatologist in Mbagathi
Oh,
Hospital.
okay.
Yeah, so she
That's in
sees
Nairobi.
people with,
That's
yes, in Nairobi.
caters for people in
Yes,
Nairobi.
yes, that caters for people in Nairobi, but
How
in
about the other?
every county has a district hospital where sunscreen is put, and there's a dermatologist there. So I can only speak for Nairobi because I'm in Nairobi, but every district hospital in every county has albinism, has sunscreen for people with albinism, and there's a dermatologist there. So that is through the government.
Okay.
And then in terms of policy, what I would suggest maybe the government to do is to have a policy saying that people with albinism don't have to go to schools for the blind, because we're not blind. And if they can, to also make that education free, because as I mentioned, there's a challenge I didn't mention for people with albinism on the mothers. So when mothers now have children with albinism, because of all these myths and stereotypes about a white child and dark parents, most of the time the fathers leave the mother and say, you cheated on me. I can't be black and you black, and then we have this white child. So you find the mother struggling to raise and provide all the needs of the child with albinism. So you find that education is a must, there's shelter, there's food. So when you come to eye care and maybe skin care, buying sunscreen, that becomes a luxury. And now you find them compromising on so many other things. And then in terms of safety, the mother can't really go out and look for work because she has to take care and watch over this child who's there because someone might steal her or steal their child and all that. So if we could maybe make education free, that would be really good. But there are organizations that also sponsor the education of children with albinism. One is one that I used to work for, Dr. Choksi Albinism Foundation. Dr. Choksi is an ophthalmologist, so she offers her services free of cost. And then once a child now is given that treatment and a bit of history is taken, they determine how else they can help the child, and that comes in education or a bit of social support. So in terms of social support, I come in because when I was working in the foundation, I used to counsel the parents, I used to counsel the children. And then when I moved to now the bank, at least now we sponsor education of children with albinism. So I really try to do a lot of mentorship and counseling of people with albinism to at least help them understand how the world works around them and what they can do, maybe have that confidence, accept themselves, because no one has that time to help you understand yourself. It's a very competitive world out there, and there's no time to stop and think and lament about the situation you're in. So I try to help people understand themselves and just learn how to fight competitively with the rest of the world around them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know this is a very huge topic. IG just allows 1 hour, and I can see that we are almost at 1 hour. But then
Okay.
I am thinking that maybe we need more, sessions to talk about this as we move closer to the
date.
The day. Is it 16th June?
Yeah, to the day. 13th.
June.
It's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
Yeah, 13th June,
So that
International Albinism.
So that we can, try and bring people to also help out in terms of any way that they can help out to,
True.
empower the people living with albinism, because I am sure there are very many challenges. We'll try and bring other people also on board, persons living with albinism. I have a few friends, and I know you have a few friends also. If we can bring them together, and then we can talk about this more and just just give light to the personal experiences, because every single person has their own experience. So it's saying that we only have 1 minute remaining. Well, just quickly, Vincent had asked the skin cancer aspect.
Yes.
Is it just brought about through exposure to sunlight, or light entirely? Okay, so that's one question. And then I also had my own question, and then this was just personally to you. So I was asking, so when you look back at, say, your life living with albinism, what are some of the things that you have really the things that have really stood out for you? What really gives you that strength? Okay, just to make it brief before this 30 seconds.
Okay. So skin cancer is caused by the exposure to UV rays of the sun, not just light in general, but the UV rays of the sun. And since we don't have melanin which absorbs them, the UV rays get into the skin directly, and that's now what causes the skin cancer. The lack of melanin to protect us from the UV rays from the sun. And then for me, what has really helped me as a person with albinism to be where I am right now, it's because of my mom, generally. Even though she didn't really understand what it is, she really tried to help me face the challenges that encountered me. Like if I was going out into the sun, she'll tell me you have to apply sunscreen, you have to wear a hat, because mothers are just super women. So for me, getting me to where I am right now, it's because of my mom and the way she really instilled confidence in me and just helped me grow into the person I am right now, and also made everything seem like just it's a stepping stone. Even when I was in high school and teachers didn't want to understand, she's like, it's okay, it's just for 4 years. Once you're done, you are out.
That was
Yeah.
really awesome. We'll try and have you some other time also. This was awesome.